Hi there folks, Sam here, and welcome to my new mini-series, Total War Warhammer, An Old Friend. Now, there's been a lot of speculation about what this final DLC, free DLC could be, and although I'm sure it was originally intended to be a free DLC, I think at this stage people are looking for something to keep them going till the release of Total War Warhammer 2. I think one thing I'm sure of is that an old friend refers to something for the Empire. The Empire is our old friend in Total War Warhammer. It's the most similar to the factions of previous Total War games. And it's also the only starting race still not to have 4 legendary lords. So today I'm going to look at the idea in this video that the Cult of Ulric will be the new DLC. Now, the leader of the faction of Middenheim, the Elector Count, is Boris Todbringer, and the Cult of Ulric is predominantly in Middenheim and Nordland, and Boris Todbringer is a member of this cult, but he's not the leader. That is the R. Ulric, Emil Valgier. So I think we could see possibly both of them show up in the faction, but if we're just getting the one legendary lord, I'd bet it'd be Boris Todbringer, who's already a playable lord in the multiplayer if you've completed the Call of Beastmen campaign. I think in this case, we're not going to see a mini campaign with the Cult of Ulric. I think in place of that, we'll see legendary lords regiments of renown as potential free DLC, following Seer's rule that there were no DLC for DLC. So that is, how do we get regiments of renown for factions such as the Beastmen and the Wood Elves, and possibly Chaos? I think that could be included all in this bundle, although that would perhaps make it a little bit more expensive and not really free LC. Now, the Cult of Ulric stretches way back to before the birth of the Empire. Indeed, Ulric was worshipped by Sigmar himself. Now, there was an army book for the Cult of Ulric, and I've been having a wee flick through it, and it's quite an interesting one. I would be more inclined to think that in the style of the Grim and the Grave and the King and the Warlord, the faction will not be completely unique. I think it will have a bunch of new units, but mostly be the original Empire, as the Cult of Ulric units aren't really enough to flesh out an entire faction. And that would also mean the units were available to the Empire, which would give it a few more units that I would have access to anyway in the lore. But you could perhaps have the situation where maybe the units are only accessible if you confederate or have a military alliance with Middenheim. I feel like the Cult of Ulric is all around the Empire anyway, so perhaps they should have access to units from the start. Now, I've already said the legendary lord would be Boris Todbringer, who would have his Runefang and the Talisman of Ulric, which is kind of a healing artifact he has. Now, as another legendary lord, you could have R. Ulric, Emil Valgier, but I'm fairly sure they won't put him in place. Although I think a lot of your buildings, rather than the Cult of Sigmar, will be Cult of Ulric. As for basic lords, you could have the Midden Marshal, and perhaps the Grand Master of the White Wolves, and Priest of Ulric. Heroes for the faction could include the Seneschal of the White Wolf, your usual battle wizards, warrior priests, etc. Now, the armour book gives you a few core units, and I'm going to run through them quickly. First of all, you have the Warriors of Ulric, who are lightly armoured. They can have either shields and hand weapons like swords, axes, maces, or they can have great weapons such as great hammers. Now, as far as Cult of Ulric units go, they're actually fairly well armoured. They don't wear too much in the way of wolfskins like a lot of units do, and they'd be very, very similar to your Empire swordsmen. So perhaps they would be an additional regiment of renown. Although I would like to see them be their own unit, as they'd be perhaps a lighter version, less lightly armoured, but perhaps with more melee attack. I'm not quite sure. Secondly, my personal favourite is the Knights of the White Wolf. I actually had these Warhammer models I got when I first started collecting, Now, they are in fact mounted on horses before everyone gets too excited. They have wolfskin cloaks, and they come in full plate armour with great big warhammers. So these would definitely be a shock cavalry, but they're a very impressive unit. They're really good looking. And considering Knights of the Blazing Sun, I think they could do a bit with this. The last of the core units is the Swords of Ulric, another infantry unit. They're also lightly armoured, and they're more sword and shield. They have these distinctive yellow shields with a red wolf on it, which is a symbol of Ulric embattled. And in comparison to the Warriors of Ulric, these guys would be perhaps a bit more defensive. They're not running about crazy like the warriors are. They're got the shields, got the swords, perhaps formations. Although I think we'll see probably distinct formations in the Total War Warhammer 2. Moving on to the special units, I think we'll see the can't get the words out. The Teutogen Guard, who will be heavy melee infantry, plate armour, wolf cloaks, and the big wolf warhammers. They're very much like your my tongue has run away from me today. The great swords, who have perhaps not as heavy armour, but perhaps more armour piercing. You also have the Winter Wolves of Middenheim, which as far as I can tell are monstrous cavalry, where they do really ride giant wolves, which is awesome. They're also in plate armour with warhammers and wolfskin cloaks, which seems a bit cool if you're riding one. And finally for the specials you have the Hunting Hounds, which are just a generic war beast, perhaps similar to your dire wolves. They can come with a huntmaster who's got light armour and a spear, pretty similar to the Warhounds of Rome. Finally, you've got your rare units, such as the Wolfkin. Now these are more a frenzied skirmisher unit. They can have two hand weapons, they've got light armour, they can have a shield and a sword, or they can have great weapons. These are perhaps your Viking Berserker units. They're going to look crazy, they're going to be screaming, roaring. We've seen similar things for Viking factions in Rome and medieval. They're going to cause fear, they're going to be frenzied, they're going to be unbreakable. They should slot right into perhaps a sort of flagellant role in the army. Next we have two, in my opinion, very special units. We have the Knights Panther, which aren't directly related to the Cult of Ulric, but they do have a strong presence in Middenheim, and they have special war horses from Araby, because that's where they got their name, as they were crusaders to Araby who discovered panthers in a temple, and there's a whole big story to it. It's much more interesting. But the basics here are they're plate armoured, they have panther skins over their horses and sometimes as cloaks. They don't have panthers on their helmets. They actually recently have sort of golden beastmen heads, because that's who their prey is nowadays. They have a lance and a hand weapon, or a lance and a shield. I'm not too sure if you would see them, because at this point we have Rights Guard, Empire Knights, Blazing Suns. We're going to have the Knights of the White Wolf, perhaps the Winter Wolves of Middenheim. Knights Panther might be too much, but again, for how simple they would be to work in, it's just another option that people would like. People love the Knight Orders, and we're disappointed they weren't better represented in the base game. Finally, you have the Children of Ulric, who will have frenzy, regeneration. They're actually monstrous beasts, monstrous infantry. Basically, they're werewolves. There's a story about a princess who basically slept with Ulric himself and gave birth to were-children who could walk as both man and wolf. There's some really cool models for these guys. It's all bloody and teeth, and they would have razor sharp claws, probably be a very, very fast unit. And to be honest, I'd quite like to see a unit of them tear into a Vargulf, have the whole werewolf versus vampire thing going on. It could be quite interesting. I don't think this pack would introduce too much in the way of mechanics. I think if you're getting a new playable faction, I think you're getting Regiments of Renown. Somewhat considering what we got on some Lord packs, a price range would be hard to kind of pin down. perhaps around a tenner. I don't think it should be quite as expensive as the Lord packs were, because you're not actually getting as much, but then you are getting more new units, but less campaign mechanics. I mean, there's not going to be any Carrack 8 peaks. It'll perhaps be a bit more like the Grim and the Grave. Now, when would I like to see this DLC drop? I think sometime, perhaps around June. A lot of people are speculating we're going to see Total War Warhammer 2 in the next at least 6 months away, perhaps in October or November. So June, July is a good kind of midpoint that will keep you going. It means that CA won't have to... CA, in my opinion, is a marvellous hype engine. Like every day I'm on their website, although not today, on their Facebook, and they've got some new little bit of information. It's perhaps not much. It's maybe a bit of concept art. It's maybe a wee short video, just give you a little bit more information. But they don't have too much to show off right now. I mean, we're seeing like concept art of temple guards. So if they've got this DLC coming out, they can show bits from that, and that'll keep the hype going as well. I personally read a cracking article suggesting that Total War Warhammer 2 would come out in September, following a pattern they followed with Rome 2 and Attila, where it was about a year and a half between titles. But either way, I do think June, if they were to announce this DLC in May, June would be a good time for it to come out. Anyway, this has been my quite long for a short video on the Old Friend DLC. I'm going to do a couple more, perhaps take a look at a few more Empire Old Friends, perhaps some other Old Friends that we've not considered, but I do really want to bear in mind that not many other factions have had nothing new since the start of the game. I know the Empire's had the Grim and the Grave, but they've not had the amount of lords the rest of them have. So I do think it'll be Empire related, and there could be no DLC for DLC, so that does seem to limit it as well. But I'll have a wee dig, I'll have a wee look, and I'll see you guys soon. Right, cheers now.